Imagine you are sitting on a quiet night flight. The cabin hums. The drinks trolley rolls. A child giggles. You look out a small oval window and see only stars. Nothing about that night tells you it will be the last time some people see home. This is the story of Flight 508. A routine domestic flight that vanished into the dark. A flight that left questions burning in the minds of investigators, families, and strangers who could not let the story go. It is a story stitched from reports, testimonies, and the small, painful traces that remained. It is a story of humans in metal shells against the sky. And it is a story that refuses to close. Flight 508 was scheduled to fly from Chicago O'Hare to Portland. It was January, a bitter month. Weather charts showed low clouds over the plains and a band of snow sweeping across the Dakotas. Airlines expected delays. Pilots planned fuel stops. The jet that would carry 155 passengers and 9 crew members was a late model Boeing with a clean maintenance record. Everyone on the ground called it routine. Captain Lawrence Reed had been flying for 26 years. He was steady. He had a salt and pepper beard and a habit of folding his hands behind his back during checklist reads. First Officer Maria Santos was younger, collected, and sharp. The cabin crew were practiced and kind. Passengers ranged from families returning home to lone business travelers. Among them were a retired schoolteacher, a young couple with their newborn, a man traveling with a case of antique coins, a student bound for an interview. Life stories, fragile and ordinary, interlaced for hours. Departure delayed by 20 minutes. A minor maintenance item. A circuit breaker that tripped in the avionics bay. The airline's maintenance log later showed a note, reset, monitors OK. It was a small detail, recorded and then filed. Passengers settled. The engines roared. Flight 508 climbed into low clouds and then into the cold dark above. For the first 90 minutes, the flight was normal. Coffee. Movies. A lullaby from a tiny voice in row 12. Flight data flowed to controllers. Captain Reed conversed calmly with approach. They joked lightly about the late dinner orders. Nothing about their tone hinted at trouble. Then at 21:14, on the eastbound leg over Minnesota, the plane made a sudden, sharp climb. Radar showed the jet rise nearly 3,000 feet in 50 seconds. Air traffic control issued a query. The transcript, later released, was terse. Static, then Captain Reed, we're experiencing unusual pressure. First Officer Santos, cabin differential spiking. And then, a whisper lost in noise, we've got a light, outside. What was this light? Ground witnesses in 2 towns reported a flash. One farmer told a reporter he watched a bright sphere fall and then vanish into cloud. A truck driver near the interstate swore he saw a streak of white that made the whole sky bloom for a second. The NTSB later catalogued these as unverified astronomical sightings. But the crew heard it. They spoke of something they could not place. At 21:22, instruments began to flicker. The primary flight display showed a transient loss of attitude information. The captain called for a reversion to standby instruments. Meanwhile, the plane's transponder signal, its electronic name, became glitchy. Controllers saw the signal jump, then vanish. For air traffic, the last known reading was an abrupt drop in altitude, and then nothing. Then the radio silence. No mayday. No distress call. The aircraft simply disappeared off the scopes. On the ground, confusion turned to dread. Planes were vectored into the area. The search grid expanded. Ships cut lines through the cold sea. Helicopters skimmed the waves. Ground teams combed frozen fields. If a crash had occurred, it should have left fuel streaks, a debris field, bodies. But for 3 long days, nothing turned up. Not a fragment. Not a suitcase. not the metal shimmer of a wing. In the fourth day, fishermen discovered a seat cushion. It was stained, warped by salt, and the upholstery was scorched. A small piece of composite with paint intact washed up near a river mouth. The materials lab analyzed the paint and suggested it matched the manufacturer's color code used on certain 737 series. The discovery offered hope, then more uncertainty. The items did not match the kind of wreckage a catastrophic breakup would scatter. Investigators scratched their heads. Meanwhile, families waited. They held vigils in drawn curtains. The airline set up a crisis center. Officials gave cautious statements. Days bled into weeks. The NTSB assembled a team. International assistance arrived. There was protocol. Search grids, sonar sweeps, magnetic anomaly detectors. Satellite imagery was dragged into light and analyzed hour by hour. In the investigation rooms, glassy-eyed analysts crawled through data. They replayed the cockpit voice recorder when found. It was reddish with salt and mud but salvageable. Engineers labored to restore the flight data recorder. Both offered fragments, jagged echoes of a last conversation. The voice recording revealed moments so ordinary it hurt. Laughter over a joke. A stewardess humming. Then the change. A thump. A muffled mechanical alert. Then a voice, Reed's voice, "We're reading a system failure on bus 1 and 2. Santos answered, "We're switching to emergency power." More static. A creak. Reed, "What the hell is that light?" Santos, "It's like something's parading the sky." Then a long, breathy silence interrupted by a sound the forensics lab would later describe as a low-frequency, non-mechanical oscillation. The pilots were heard saying, "It's above us." Beat. Flight data was odd. Sensors told impossible stories. Altitude spiked and fell in patterns that no aerodynamic model could explain. Airspeed readings suggested the aircraft kissed speeds beyond structural limits and then crawled back like an animal wounded. Some channels recorded electromagnetic noise injecting false data into navigation sensors. Engineers kept muttering the same word, corrupted. Why would sensors corrupt? Lightning strikes are known to play with electronics. So are solar storms. But on that night, the sun was quiet. There were no recorded solar flares. Military radars nearby later admitted to a routine exercise, but nothing that could send a plane to the ground without a trace. Or could it? Conspiracy finds fertile ground where official answers are thin. Within weeks, rumors about a missile test began to surface. A retired missile crew member wrote anonymously to a tabloid claiming a missile had been fired and that the government had covered it up. He cited a training exercise in the wrong corridor, a missile that locked onto an unintended target. The government flatly denied any such activity. Documents that might prove or disprove this claim remained classified. Families demanded transparency. Investigators pushed. Redactions appeared. Then a supposed leak, a scanned page from a decommissioned training manual, made its way online. It suggested the existence of a radar system designed to create temporary electromagnetic blanks. Engineers warned such systems could temporarily blind aircraft instruments. Yet linking that to Flight 508 was a leap. Still, every unexplained glitch lit a candle in the dark for skeptics. Conspiracy finds fertile ground where official answers are thin. Within weeks, rumors about a missile test began to surface. A retired missile crew member wrote anonymously to a tabloid claiming a missile had been fired and that the government had covered it up. He cited a training exercise in the wrong corridor, a missile that locked onto an unintended target. The government flatly denied any such activity. Documents that might prove or disprove this claim remained classified. Families demanded transparency. Investigators pushed. Redactions appeared. Then a supposed leak, a scanned page from a decommissioned training manual, made its way online. It suggested the existence of a radar system designed to create temporary electromagnetic blanks. Engineers warned such systems could temporarily blind aircraft instruments. Yet linking that to Flight 508 was a leap. Still, every unexplained glitch lit a candle in the dark for skeptics. On the emotional front, the human stories poured out. A young mother in Ohio, with a son that would never grow up, told reporters how she had told him to take his headphones off that night. A retired mechanic confessed he had worked on dozens of planes but never had he seen a maintenance log like Flight 508's. The log showed entries erased and re-entered. Adjusted per text, so read the code. What was adjusted? Who approved it? The airline's PR team grew defensive. Months passed. Experts painted two broad lines of thought. One camp clung to mechanical failure. A sudden rupture, a catastrophic mid-air blowout, then a sink to a deep, remote part of the sea. The lack of debris could be explained by a high-energy event and deep ocean scavenging. The other camp argued for something else, non-conventional interference. An event that caused instruments to fail, burned some internal components, and left the fuselage largely intact. Investigative journalists found an angle that consumed the community. A small regional newspaper published an interview with a retired air traffic controller. He claimed he had seen a secondary radar blip minutes before Flight 508 went quiet. A dot chasing the flight, he said, zigzagging unnaturally, too fast, too sharp. The paper printed the account. Within hours, the story was amplified. Pilots texted each other. Old men in bars argued about what it meant. A pilgrim of theories surged online. The family of one passenger, an electrical engineer named Tom Halverson, refused to accept the NTSB's soft conclusion. Tom had been traveling with a bag of prototype hardware. Among his items was a small experimental radio transmitter used for a university satellite project. The university confirmed that Tom had been carrying it. It was lightweight. Had it interfered? Had some fluke caused the transmitter to emit a harmonic that interfered with flight instruments? Experts said no, at cruising altitudes, such interference was negligible. But the seed of coincidence rings long in human minds. As the search continued, a deep-sea submersible found a fragment. It came from the aircraft's underbelly, scorched in a way investigators could not immediately account for. The metals showed heat signatures inconsistent with a simple impact. Thermographic analysis suggested temperatures much higher than typical combustion. The wreck fragment also bore odd abrasions, parallel grooves that some engineers compared to gouges scraped by cable or by contact with a molten stream. The fragment was small, about the size of a tabletop, but it yielded debate and more questions. A government scientist, speaking off the record, speculated about a rare phenomenon, ball lightning on a scale large enough to interact with a metallic fuselage. Ball lightning is real, poorly understood, and feared. It can appear as a luminous sphere and last seconds. But could it cling to a craft and burn through a skin? Theory aside, nothing in peer-reviewed meteorology pointed to a ball lightning event of the magnitude required. The science community remained skeptical. Months turned into years, and the story branched. Someone claimed that a photo had surfaced showing Flight 508, some foggy long-lens shot of a distant object over the Atlantic. In the photo, the plane's tail number appeared odd. The photo's origin was murky. The photographer, an ex-hobbyist in Iceland, refused to go public. He claimed he did not want the attention. Then the photo turned up in a forum and then disappeared. Perhaps the darkest twist came with the discovery of a voicemail. One of the passengers' families retrieved a message from their loved one's phone. The recording was 4 minutes of static and then a faint male voice whispering a phrase the family swore they recognized as the pilot's voice. But the message existed on a server log. The engineer who pulled the logs refused to talk after his house was broken into. He left town and took a higher-paying job overseas. The piece of paper with the server IDs was thrown into a shredder the day after his break-in. The trail went cold. As years passed, Flight 508 became more than a case file. It became a mirror. It revealed fault lines, between families and bureaucracies, between transparency and secrecy, between human grief and the cold rhythms of investigation. The airline's stock wobbled. Board members changed. Lawsuits piled up. The NTSB's investigators, many dedicated and honest, grew frustrated by missing data and classified documents. They kept meeting in windowless rooms, poring over maps and black boxes that sometimes told lies. And then came the hearsay that changed the conversation. An ex-military pilot, now working in private contract, told a documentary filmmaker that he had been ordered in the 1990s to carry out a radar test over the flight path. He described a system designed to paint an area with electromagnetic energy to conceal movements during an exercise. He insisted the system posed no risk to civil traffic. The contractor's logs, however, recorded a temporary power surge on the evening in question. The contractor swiftly sealed his files. The U.S. Department of Defense issued a terse denial. The documentary aired anyway. In the documentary, families watched the ex-pilot and linked him with the mysterious radar blip previously reported. He lit the fuse for renewed outrage and renewed investigation. Congress demanded a briefing. Redactions persisted. The Defense Department said the records were sensitive but not classified. New technology helped. Sonar improved. Deep-sea mapping became more affordable. An independent consortium raised funds and sent ROVs to the last suspected crash area. They surveyed at great depth, scraping the sea floor. The ROVs found unfamiliar formations, twisted metal and sections that could be aircraft. But these were at depths where retrieval was difficult and expensive. A legal battle then ensued over who paid. While the law argued, the ocean buried time and salt. A small but loud group argued that Flight 508 had been deliberately taken to a secure facility, an off-the-grid landing in some remote military base or a specially arranged harbor. Witnesses came forward saying they had seen unusual cargo trucks in a nearby port in the weeks following the disappearance. Customs records were incomplete. Some men saw trucks with black tarps and thought nothing of them. Others swore they carried parts wrapped in steel. Nothing was confirmed. Then an ex-intelligence analyst for a private firm emailed a reporter claiming the flight might have been interested by foreign actors, an espionage angle. He suggested that an asset on the plane had compromised something larger. Again, no concrete proof. But the speculation fed the story's hunger. Years rolled on. Pilots began to invoke Flight 508 like a ghost story told at briefings to new hires, an anecdote about the fragility of flight and the limits of control. Families aged. Memorials cropped up in airports. Flowers wilted, names on plaques faded and were relettered. Yet the case stayed open in many minds. The final, most unsettling piece of the puzzle arrived 2 decades later. A research team using a newly declassified satellite program found a faint anomaly in archived data. A patch of heat that could not be explained. When they requested more data, they were told the files were incomplete. A ministerial note suggested tapes had been overwritten after a routine maintenance cycle. The team's data scientist published an irate blog, "Someone did not intend this to be found." The post was taken down following a copyright complaint. If Flight 508 is a lesson, it is that truth can be curdled by secrecy. It is that institutions can fail to tell full stories. It is that grief can be exploited by rumor and by hidden paperwork. But it is also a lesson about the stubbornness of people who seek answers. The families, the independent divers, the journalists, each chipping away at a mystery that resists conclusion. So where does that leave us now? We have fragments, testimonies, blurry photos, corrupted data, and a few pieces of wreckage at the bottom of the sea. We have pilots who swear the sky felt wrong that night, and we have technicians who whisper of power surges and instrument jamming. We have official denials and leaked rumors. We have the last whisper from a cockpit, it's right above us. Pause 2s. In the end, the most honest answer might be that we do not know. We can imagine scenarios. We can point fingers. We can hypothesize exotic electromagnetic fields or mundane neglect. But we can also hear the human echo in the silence, that 164 people boarded a plane and never came home. If you believe in a mechanical failure, then Flight 508 is a tragic fault in engineering and oversight. If you believe in a cover-up, then it is a conspiracy that exposes how governments and corporations withhold answers to the public. If you allow for the strange and the unknown, perhaps something occurred that we cannot yet explain with our tools. Each explanation reveals more about us than it does about the sky. Maybe that is the point. We look at the empty seat on a plane and we ask for closure because that is how we live. But some events refuse to be wrapped in tidy facts. They remain open, like a wound. Tonight, if you find yourself looking up at the stars, think about the people who once sat on Flight 508. Think about the small bright things we call instruments and the enormous dark things we call oceans. And ask yourself this, when the world removes an answer, who will go on searching for it? Beat, tell us what you think. What happened to Flight 508? Was it an accident, a hidden test, or something that we have yet to name?